If you've been using the question and answer tree chart at copyrightdata.com, you should have noticed that a copyright renewal can be deemed invalid if the renewal is filed by somebody who does not have the right to renew. There have been some court decisions that have confirmed this, and you can read about those at copyrightdata.com. Nonetheless, on the basis of how the particular statute is written, it is apparent that so long as the renewal registration is made by somebody who does have the valid right, it does not matter that this is not the same name as the party that originally made the registration. We saw earlier in this video that Paramount was a party to the registration of Vertigo, but Universal had acquired rights in the interim. Paramount had lost whatever rights it may have had, so it's entirely appropriate that Universal filed the renewal registration. Likewise, over 700 feature films that Paramount made from 1929 to 1949 were sold to MCA Television, which then acquired Universal and renamed itself Universal. So therefore, a renewal on a Paramount feature film that was made in the name of MCA or Universal should seem to be valid. However, when we look at several of the renewal registrations, we see EMCA, E-M-K-A.
It is the fact that these renewals were made in the name of EMCA instead of Universal or MCA a sign that these renewals aren't valid?
Not at all. EMCA is an MCA company. Therefore, we should take it that these renewal registrations, which were done in a timely fashion, are legitimate and that these films remain under copyright. Users of the copyrightdata.com question and answer tree also read that there are deposit requirements imposed by the copyright laws, whereby a copy of the work had to be deposited with the Library of Congress, and there were specific rules on what type of media should be provided to the Library of Congress. Viewers of this video who are especially alert may have noticed that on Plan 9 from Outer Space, the deposit was made in the form of a VHS cassette. Now, according to the list, this is not preferable to a 35mm print. Instead, a 35mm print is to be deposited if the film was released in 35mm. Indeed, Plan 9 from Outer Space was filmed and released in 35mm. That was the case in 1958, and even in the early 1980s, there were 35mm prints circulating to revival theaters. The question then arises, was the copyright on Plan 9 from Outer Space invalidated for lack of the appropriate type of deposit? No. Here you have to consider that there were two separate sets of rules applicable. There was a set of rules applicable in 1958 and another set applicable in 1981. These different sets of rules are spelled out on a particular page about deposit requirements at copyrightdata.com. These are direct quotations from the different copyright laws in effect at the different times. It was indeed the case in 1958 that an inappropriate deposit could invalidate a copyright, although even there, the would-be copyright holder was given a second chance. However, this registration was made in 1981. In 1981, the laws had been changed whereby a copyright holder who deposited an inferior format could be fined thousands of dollars, but he would not lose copyright. Therefore, in the case of Plan 9 from Outer Space, you cannot claim that copyright was lost on the basis of the deposit requirements. Usually when you're interested in copyright records, you're interested in knowing, was a work registered, and usually, most importantly, was it renewed? The easiest way of going about that at the Library of Congress is to use their complete set of the catalog of copyright entries. In them, you'll find groups of all of the copyrights registered in a given month, quarter, half year, or year, and in a separate section, all of the renewal registrations recorded within that same month, quarter, half year, or year. Once you know what time period to look for that renewal, it's a simple matter of narrowing your search to the particular volumes covered by that particular time period. Keep in mind you might come across some of the errors we've seen thus far. If you remember that among the online records there were 2 different renewal registrations for Vertigo, then you might also realize that among those works covered by the records that are on paper, there can be works on which there are 2 separate renewal registrations. One such example was the 1934 film of Babes in Toyland. As explained on a page at copyrightdata.com, one of these renewal registrations was invalid, but the other one is valid, so the film continues to enjoy copyright. These hundreds of volumes of the catalogs of copyright entries exist not only at the Library of Congress, where there is a complete set, but also at many major libraries around the United States, which have at least some of the volumes. Furthermore, there are some online sources that have incomplete sets. The information provided by the Copyright Office can be misleading, as you saw with the Cosmopolitan April 1963 issue, where the Bob Hope renewal wasn't with the others. Your failure to follow up on incomplete information will not excuse you from legal liability for infringement. There have been court decisions where defendants have been found guilty and where the Copyright Office had been found to have been wrong. The best advice when using the resources referred to here is to click those citation buttons and documentation buttons. Follow them through. Read the information about which passages in the law are being referenced, and then go to the United States government's own law reference sites, or for the earlier laws, visit law.copyright.data.com to read the actual text of the legislation. This video has covered how to research copyright records. However, as some of the examples have shown, it can be necessary to understand what a derivative work is and how copyright applies to it, as we saw with Desert Trail. It's important to understand copyright duration and rules that might cause a copyright to have to be renewed early, as we saw here with About Face and The Road to Bali. The subjects of derivative works, copyright duration, and early expiration are covered in separate videos, in circulars offered by the Copyright Office, and in pages at copyrightdata.com.